Just someone to keep my house clean, fix my meals and go away.
This is a reading from A Shallow Grave by James Purdy. It must have been the middle of June, because the bob whites were making such a fuss in the woods as it was their mating time, and they were hollering to one another, and this black fellow, about 18, came up and rapped on the second door, the screen door. I don't know whether he had heard of me or not, evidently not, really, for he started to speak as I stood slightly shaded by the screen, holding the book of prophecies in my right hand, and commencing to lift the latch and saying, "What do you want?" He started to speak again, his tongue moving and his lips twisting, but no words came out the second time either. "Mrs. Pedersen wonders if you wants the goats," he finally got out after looking every which way when he spoke. "Why does she want to give them to me for?" I inquired. "Oh, Mrs. Pedersen is dead, and she can't keep them no more," he replied. "She's going to move to Richmond." "What are you, the hired man?" I opened the door and let him in. We was in the kitchen now, if I recall accurately, and I invited him to sit down, partly, I think, so he wouldn't fall down. There was a sliver in my finger that was causing me no end of pain, and having laid down the book of prophecies on the tablecloth, I was trying to work it out with a tiny pair of scissors. When I quit looking in his direction to get this sliver out, he got easier with me. I heard him tell me his name after a while. Quintus Perch. "Why, I know your folks, Quintus." Just then we both looked up at the same time and saw the goats had come up to the back porch and were looking through the screen door. "Why, there's 5 of the buggers, Quintus," I said. "I don't know. I never kept goats before. What I'm really looking for," and I studied him a little bit out of the corner of my eye, "is a sort of helper around here for myself." Before I knew what had happened, he was working that sliver out from my finger without being asked. "Miss Peterson's niece, Miss Ledlam, must have been the one sent you about the goats, was it?" I went on talking to keep from screaming as he took out the sliver. For my flesh, you see, all falls away at the slightest pressure, exposing the bones. He showed me the silver now caught in the blades of the scissors. I thanked him, and then he hurried to get out. "Excuse me, but can you read?" "I read, Mr. Montrose." "What do you read?" "Anything printed I can run my eye over." "Can you read aloud?"
How do you mean that?" Quintus inquired.
"I mean, if I was to put a book in your hands, and I sat on a chair, see, when I'm not well, especially come winter, would you sit and face and read out loud to me?" Quintus thought about this, and then I rushed into the next room and took down a dusty volume of history and put it in his hands and said, "Read this. Why don't you? Any place at all will do." And Quintus held the book as if it was alive, as one of the young goats outside. That is, the book seemed to struggle in his hands and want down, but he began nonetheless to read very neatly and fluidly from this book, writhing in his strong fingers. "You shed the blood of my brother on the banks of the Mississippi 20 years ago, and what then? I am here today, thank God, to vindicate the principles baptized in his blood." I took the book from his hands, just as it was about to wiggle out from his grasp, and he put it down on the cloth. "I could pay you good, Quintus," I said after complimenting him in my mind on the way he could read. "I'm most desperate for company in the bargain. Can you rub cold feet, by the way?" "I couldn't leave Mama," Quintus finally said. "She's most bedridden." "Ah. Why don't you want the goats?" I sort of turned the subject. "Well," Quintus stumbled around, we don't want the care animals now." "Well, I want the goats," I told him, looking out through the screen. One was only a small kid, and I went out on the back porch and picked it up and brought it in. "I want the goats," I said again, holding the little fellow to me. Its fur was quite damp, and I asked Quintus to reach me a cloth and wipe him dry. Why didn't I think of having goats before? I said. I looked up suddenly and saw that expression on his face that everybody eventually gets when they look at me. We both looked down immediately. You find me so sickening to look at, Quintus? I said brutally, after a long pause. No, sir. You read good, Quintus. Would you read for me in the evening, or maybe rub my feet when they get to be on the ice-cold order? I could come in the evenings after I attend to Mama. I could pay you good, Quintus. I tell you what, Quintus began, standing up. I could come over most days in the p.m. and do your chores. I don't want chores, Quintus. I want somebody to read to me and rub my feet. He looked discontented and troubled. Well, then don't come, Quintus, don't come. I have to have my feet rubbed, though. I'm not trying to, I'll come at 4 today if you want me to. He all of a sudden blurted out and rose. By the way, did you know Widow Rance, Quintus, who runs down the road? Oh, yes. You're a familiar face to her and all? Widow Rance knows me, ma'am. Because the other thing I might ask you, and I don't know why I forgot it, for it's away and beyond the most important thing, is to deliver and fetch letters. Well, we'll talk later. Till the p.m. then, Quince.